Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
100 billion ways. 100 billion ways the infinite is revealing its blessing every minute. That song is just so beautiful. They did a wonderful job. Thank you, Julia, so much for that. So that's one of my favorite songs, and it's just such a privilege to be able to share it with you all in this space together, because I love unity. I love the teachings, I love the people, I love the community, but, oh yes, there's a but. There's a but. And sometimes unity people don't even like to say the word but I'm going to say it. But when I first found unity, and even a couple years into finding unity, I had a hard time articulating what it was we were about. I could articulate what we were not about. I would tell people I found this great place, this great spiritual community. It's not really like a normal church. We don't do original sin. Everything was a not. Well, we don't relegate God to being some man in the sky. We don't have dogma. We're not exclusive. We don't think we're the only path, but that we're the ones with all the right answers. Now, some of y'all may be thinking that you're the only ones with the right answer, but we don't teach that we have all the right answers. And so sometimes it's very helpful on our journeys to say, not this. That's helpful in a definition. But if we are to leave it there, we're missing out on a richness. And we're missing out on a depth, because there is something that is this teaching. There is a presence here. It's not just the lack of something. It's like this. If I were going to set you up on a date, if you asked me, Stacy, can you set me up on a date? And I say, got it. I've got a great person for you. Let me describe them to you. Okay? They're not stingy. They're not uncaring and rude. Let me see what else. Oh, they don't drain the energy when they come into a room. Anybody signing up for that person? You'd be a little suspicious, right? But instead, if I said to you, hey, I have somebody for you, they are generous. They are kind and compassionate. And when they walk into a room, they light the whole place up with their joy and their presence. Now, who's signing up for that? And married people, keep your hands down. I'm not going to be responsible for getting into any trouble here. And so this month, we're going to be talking about Matthew Fox. Matthew Fox was a friar in the Dominican order, and he was dismissed from that order because of his controversial teachings. And one of his controversial teachings is an idea called original blessing. He created his own theology called creation spirituality. This idea that we are all one, that the earth is sacred, we are sacred. By our own birthright, we are sacred. Does that sound a little familiar? And so he saw what was not fitting for him in his own tradition, and he created something that he could be for. And if you were at the Cosmic Mass in January, I don't want you to have FOMO if you weren't, that Rev Shirley led, that was a testament to his work. That's one of the ways that he does worship. And we're going to do it again in September, right, Shirley? Because what he talks about are these journeys that we can take in creation spirituality. These journeys that are all part of discovering the divinity within ourselves, but then the sacredness within the world and our connection with the world. And so today we're starting everything off with the path of awe. Yeah, we could use some awe in our lives, all right? Because here's the thing, if we do this where we just say what something's not, And why we want to say, what are we for? What is inspiring us? Can you feel that pull is different? And this is for whether you've been coming to Unity for a day or many decades. We are all continuing to evolve and to grow, and our relationship with ourselves and with the divine is continuing to evolve up until the last breath that we take. And so we want to know what it is that we want to be more for. What is our next step in our unfoldment? And so this is what Matthew Fox sought to create, something for people to follow, for people to ascribe to. And he didn't just do this out of his own intuition. He consulted mystics and philosophers and theologians down through the ages in a wide variety of spiritual traditions, all over the board. And so what he discovered is that there was a vast amount of evidence, an overwhelming amount of evidence, that we are a blessing, that all creation is sacred. And that when Jesus was teaching in his ministry, and he was Jewish, as we know, he did not have an idea about what original sin was. That was not a teaching at the time. It wasn't until 400 years later, after Jesus was gone, that Augustine came up with this idea of humans inherited sin from Adam and Eve. So it's the fall redemption theology. And it was only this much of a lot of things Augustine said, but it took roots. For various political and institutional reasons, it took roots. And so whether you were raised in the Christian tradition or not, this idea that we are somehow flawed, that we are somehow inherently, there's something wrong with us, has been downloaded. It's in the ethers. And we have taken that on. And even if you said, well, I left original sin, that idea behind a long time ago, it still shows up in a quest for perfection. So one of the things that Matthew Fox, he loves mystics, and he especially loves Meister Eckhart. He wrote a whole book about Meister Eckhart. If you haven't read Meister Eckhart, I encourage you to. He was a 13th and 14th century mystic, Christian mystic. And he said this about creation, that this creative energy, when we were born, when 100 billion galaxies were formed, that it was something like the outbreak of all goodness. That it was something like a brilliant light that shines incessantly. That is us. This is what we are a part of. 100 billion galaxies. How are we not just walking around amazed all the time that we even exist? Right? You think, well, Stacy, I've got a to-do list. I can't just walk around amazed at everything, just looking around, just in awe. Who has time for that? Right? Well, but I think if we could all admit, if we were to really get still with ourselves, go sit out by a tree for a few minutes to notice how our life might be richer if we could lean into moments of awe more often, moments where we're content to just be and to ponder, to contemplate this fact that somehow we are alive on this planet in this moment, that we get to be alive. We don't know for how long. So what keeps us from being in this expansive energy of awe is what Matthew Fox calls the excessive quest for personal salvation, or the excessive quest for perfection. Because there's some part of us, and it's within all of us, as long as we're alive, we still have work to do here, that thinks there's some place we have to get to in order to be complete. And sometimes even for those of us on a spiritual path, it can take on a spiritual voice, that I'm arriving, I'm developing, I'm growing, and we are all growing in one sense, and yet we are already whole. We can actually grow more when we realize we're already whole. And so in this quest for perfection, we see ourselves as something inherently, there's something wrong with us. We're separate somehow from the cosmos. We're separate from other people. This is what our uniqueness is, and this is you should hear my quirks and you should hear my foibles here. I've got all that. And we start to identify with that and try to make our life just about working on ourselves. And then we look to the world like we sense this feeling of emptiness sometimes in ourselves. So we think, well, maybe something out here can fix it. And when something out here can't fix it, then we blame the something out here for not being able to fix something that's never wrong in the first place. So when we come on this journey, we are inward focused, and life just becomes about ourselves, trying to fix ourselves up, trying to present ourselves in a certain way. And the poet Hafiz, who I love, who's been called a rascal, if you know him, a Sufi poet, he says this, he compares us to a fish riding a camel. Imagine, if you will, a fish riding a camel. This is us. And he said the first thing the fish has to do is say, something ain't right about this camel ride, and damn, I feel so thirsty. So this is us when we have to realize something about the way that we keep running these patterns in our mind, something about the way of our thinking and limitations. We keep butting up against these things. We have to say, hey, hang on a minute, where's this camel taking me? This camel's dragging you all around the desert and showing you a mirage over here. Well, if you just get this certificate here, if you just get this relationship here, if you just do this, just improve yourself in this area, then everything will be okay. We have to get off that camel. We have to get off that camel and realize that we weren't ever meant to get on the thing in the first place. And again, this is the work of a lifetime. You may have gotten off the camel about one ride. It was taking you in one direction. You said, oh, I'm ready to release that. Next thing you know, something else might hook you into, right? So if we're not on this excessive quest for perfection, if there's nothing we need to do in order to be holy, what about that word? Then what do we do? So Matthew Fox talks about redefining the word holy itself. Because the word holy, when you look in the definition of it, it means to set apart. So by setting something apart, we're going back to the not this, but that. Some things aren't, some things are. And for the most part, we have probably declared ourselves holy or unholy at different times in our life. But what Matthew Fox said is holiness, we can look at it, and I love this phrase, as a cosmic hospitality. A cosmic hospitality that the cosmos itself, the universe itself welcomes all things, has room for all of it, all your insecurities, all your gifts, all your talents, all of us, and that nothing is outside of that circle. And so if we are to live as if we are in this cosmic hospitality, we have our being in it, what does that feel like to you? Does it feel a little different than trying to fix yourself up? Trying to look at yourself like an improvement project? It's all welcome. And not only is it all welcome, Matthew Fox talks about our imperfections being gifts. Because he said that it's our imperfections that unite us. When we're in a social organism together, the spiritual community would be a social organism. When we're in a social organism together, it's our imperfections, and it's when we can show our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses that allow the members of the group to rise up and to assist one another. When we can be vulnerable with each other, then other people we're able to rise up and help each other heal, rise up and be witnesses to one another, rise up and find that common, universal human thread of trying to find its wholeness. And we can support each other in that. Our Unity of Houston belonging statement says that we create a spiritual home for all people, knowing that we are one body and that we belong to each other. We belong to each other because we belong to the cosmos. We belong to the universe. We belong to the divine, and the divine, it belongs in us. It belongs to us. We share this together. And so we can bring our full selves here and know that we will be accepted and loved. And that's maybe some of what you felt when you first came to Unity. I know I did. It was kind of hard to articulate. I felt accepted for the first time. I felt like I could be myself and be loved in that for the first time in a place like this. And so if we embrace this idea, if we're willing to embrace this idea of cosmic hospitality, and I'll tell you something, it sounds lovely. Okay, I can just show up, but it does make a requirement of you in that you show up and play full out. Okay, we don't know how long we have here. And so when you're holding back and you're waiting to be perfect before you show up, or you're waiting till you think you're good enough to show up to your calling that you know has been on your heart, if you're waiting for that, it's happening now. We need you to show up now. We need you to show up on your whole self right here, right now. Because we all have work to do together. So in this cosmic hospitality, we know that God is in everything and everything is in God, whatever name you have for that. God is in everything and everything is God. Nothing happens outside. And Jesus was a master at using the not this, but that teaching technology. And he would be asked about the kingdom of heaven a lot. He had to explain it a lot. He had to compare it to a lot of things. And one of the things the Pharisees were asking him about, where is it? When is it? Come on, we're ready for it. He said, well, it's not going to come with signs that say it's over here and not there. It's not going to come and say, okay, it's coming on this date, just wait. The kingdom of heaven is among you. Not the kingdom of heaven will be among you. The kingdom of heaven is among you right now. And so it is getting off that camel. It is lifting our eyes up out of our own insufficiency, out of putting our attention on the wrong and placing it on what's right, placing what's already beautiful and true. And so we can look and see evidence of God everywhere, see evidence of being supportive everywhere. You know, there have been times in my life when I was lost. There was one particular time I was really lost because I was in the woods and I didn't know where I was going. I've been the other kind of lost too, but this time I was actually in the woods. My husband and I had gone to visit some family in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and we had been spending the week hiking in Idaho and Montana. And I think, we're from Houston. I think the fresh air up there went to our heads a little bit. And we decided on the last day, okay, we know what we're doing. We're just going to go hop on this trail. We didn't really do any research about it, didn't take any of our usual hiking accoutrement. We're just going to get in the woods, and we're bebopping along, having a good old time. And all of a sudden, I'm like, this trail doesn't seem as well marked as some of the other ones we've been on. I'm not sure that we can find our way back. Interesting. So we climbed up on some rocks and looked around. Okay, that told us nothing. Told us absolutely nothing. And then wouldn't you know it, the sky started getting quite dark, and the wind started picking up. And I started to get a little concerned. And here's the funny thing about how the human mind, I'm going to say the human mind, maybe it's just my human mind works. I was not concerned for my physical safety. I was concerned about how embarrassing it would be if we had to get rescued from these woods. I could actually picture the headline that says, "Clueless couple requires rescue. This is why we shouldn't let Texans in our parks." This is what I figured it was going to end up saying. So I had some anxiety. I managed to calm myself down a little bit about it. And I got this message, not from my husband. I don't know if we were speaking to each other. I got this internal message. Just pay attention. Just pay attention. Because, the mind was, in all seriousness, the mind was, you should have, our phones weren't picking up. You didn't even let anybody know you were going to be out here. You should have been watching closer. You shouldn't have veered off so much. You should have checked the weather, all the should. But what I got was, just pay attention. Just pay attention. And so we went for another 20 minutes or so, and I'm like, I'm paying attention. What's going to happen? So we tried that one last time to climb up on a rock, which, yes, when it's thundering, and you're probably not supposed to climb up on a rock, but we did. And we looked down, and what do we see down at the end of these rocks were 3 nuns. in habits, in Teva hiking sandals. They were probably about in their late 70s. And one of them called up to us, "Are you lost? Are you looking for parking lot, blah, blah, blah?" And we're like, "We don't know what parking lot, I'll be honest with you, but we'll go to any parking lot with you." They said, "Follow us." Okay. And when I say, so this is Houston, we're used to flat trails, right? These are very rocky, very hilly. When I say they flew down that path, my husband and I began following them. I had to turn around to my husband one time and said, "Is this real? Is this happening?" At one point, the nun in the middle fell, and the other two just picked her up, and they kept moving. They didn't even miss a beat. And when we got down to the parking lot, they left. I don't even know where they went. It's like they were a mirage. And we got in our car. First, I made my husband take a picture of me in front of the sign because I didn't want to forget that moment. And we got in the car in the rain. The sky opened up, and it began to pour. And what I knew in that moment is that when I pay attention, the universe wants to support me. That there are gifts that I could not even imagine. If I could have ordered a gift at that moment, it would have been an Uber, not 3 nuns sitting there. How? How did this happen? And, in the song Julie sang earlier, 100 billion creatures catch your breath. 100 billion galaxies are formed. We're all evolving in pursuit of what it said. And so when we tap into this infinite thing that we're all a part of, things that we might call miracles happen. And so I invite you, as you go into your week this week, to pay attention to what the divine is doing in your life. And I know sometimes we have challenges that we get drawn into, and rightly so, and we have grief and we have loss. And I invite you, whenever you can, even in the midst of all that, to lift up your head, lift up yourself, and open yourself to what's possible. Open yourself. You don't have to guess what's possible. You don't have to request what's possible. You just have to open and pay attention. And so as we close in prayer, I have one more little piece of wisdom from our friend Hafiz, who says, "Where is the door to God? It is in the sound of a barking dog. It is in the ring of a hammer. It is in a drop of rain. And it is in every face I see." And so what I know, and I know that I know that I know, is that each person within the sound of my voice is the face of God, is included in this beautiful cosmic hospitality of oneness, of sacredness. And I invite you to consider that your exact gifts and what you consider your imperfections are actually exactly what is needed right here, right now, for the healing of humanity, for the healing of our planet. And so I give thanks. I give thanks for the growing pains. I give thanks for the revelations. I give thanks for the connections. And I give thanks for even the moments of separation when it reminds me to come back home. And we declare it all good, and so it is. Amen. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.